on my grandfather's deathbed, he said to me, and I was working in New York in finance at the time, and he said to me, do what you love. And I immediately was like, I love jewelry. I could spend 24 hours a day, all day long on one sale that falls through, or I could spend 5 minutes on a sale that ends up being amazing.
Yeah.
You just kind of don't know. And to this day, it continues like that.
Everything can be brought back to community. So like when people come together and meet people they like and they have a good time and the energy feels good, and then you feel like spending money, or you feel like watching someone's movie, or you feel like reading their book.
You're holding on to something. There's not room in your heart for something else good to come to you. Like you have the passion. Like, you know, sometimes I think people give up a little too soon.
Hi, so welcome back to Be the Train, the podcast on all creative entrepreneurship ventures and how to keep yourself aligned and on track as you're starting your creative business. Very excited today to have a very good friend of mine, Alissa Matkovich, who is a private retailer jeweler. And she has her own business called Stacked LA. She's a very dangerous friend to have because her jewelry is amazing. But I also am really excited to deep dive into what it was like to build this business and help other people who are looking to do something similar. So welcome, Alissa.
Thank you.
Yeah. So first of all, tell us a little bit about you and how you started.
Yes, of course. So I moved to LA about 12 years ago, and I had previously worked in real estate finance in New York City. And when I moved here, I decided to switch careers completely. So I opened up a retail store with my best friend. It was on Robertson Boulevard. And then a few years later, we relocated to a platform in Culver City. And the dream was always to have a retail store that was like a concept store, like a Colette in Paris, where you sold everything from t-shirts and fine jewelry to teapots and rag and bone and really cool Australian brands like Ellery, and kind of create like a little community and have it be like a tastemaker type destination retail shopping experience, which was something I felt LA was lacking. And I loved it. And I opened the store with my best friend. It was open for 5 years. And after 5 years, we were really kind of just breaking even financially. And a lot of it had to do with how difficult the retail business was for clothing.
Yeah.
You know, for example, Barney's was around at the time, and Barney's closed because they couldn't even keep up with, the industry and how difficult it was. And we would order brands like Derek Lam and brands that Barney's was selling. And by the time I even opened my package, it was already 75% off on Barney's website. So it was very, very difficult. But my category that performed really amazingly was jewelry, because it's not seasonal, it's not marked down, and it just offers way more flexibility. And it's kind of like a long-term investment. As you probably know, the gold market continues to go up, and it's really something that just always performed well for us. So after 5 years, my business partner had her first child. She decided she was going to be a stay-at-home mom. We decided to close the store. And from there, I was really kind of at, the fork in the road. Like, which train do I take? Do I go back and work for somebody else, which is something I never wanted to do again? And do I change it? Like, really never wanted to. Do I change industries? And, what I really decided to do was give myself a trial year. And I said, can I sell jewelry without having a brick and mortar? Can I sell jewelry without having inventory? I worked with incredible designers. I don't make anything myself. It's all with, very, very well-known designers, as well as new ones that I find and kind of help them grow their business. And, I decided, like, let's just do it. Let's give it a test year. And this was in 2019. So I started this model pre-COVID. And once COVID hit, it was amazing for me because a lot of the stores like Bergdorf Goodman or a lot of amazing jewelry retailers all of a sudden had to close their doors.
Yeah.
And they didn't really know how to sell their clients pieces without being physically in front of them. Whereas I had this, method I'd already created where I was selling things remotely. People weren't even necessarily touching the pieces of jewelry and trying them on. They were creating them, customizing them,
Yeah.
or just ordering them based on pictures and me looking at their style and helping them understand what was a good investment and what wasn't, and building brands that were new and helping them become brands that were good to invest in. And it just kind of seamlessly became, a good company. And I've been doing it for 6 years and it grows every single year and I love
Wow.
it. And I always say to people, to do what you love, because on my grandfather's deathbed, he said to me, and I was working in New York in finance at the time, and he said to me, do what you love. And I immediately was like, I love jewelry and
Yeah.
I love to help my friends, find pieces that are going to be family heirlooms that are passed down, to recreate old pieces from grandmothers and
Yeah.
mothers, and, something that's like tangible and you can feel it and you can touch it and you love it and you feel it in your soul, as opposed to real estate finance. I wasn't quite as passionate.
So when you gave yourself this trial year, and the reason why I'm curious about the trial year is because I think everyone kind of starts there,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, obviously you had some experience already because you had a store,
Yeah.
but this trial year was you starting by yourself,
Mm-hmm.
now without a partner,
Yeah.
which is completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do you do to put yourself out there or to let people know that you're doing this? And then what does it look like to actually get the momentum? How do you get people to really be aware of you in this context, in this new business version of you?
Totally. Well, I definitely took advantage of marketing and I absolutely leveraged the pre-existing e-commerce website that we had. So when I had my store, it was actually called Reservoir. And the reason we called it Reservoir is the original location was going to be near the Silver Lake Reservoir on the east side, even though due to, something being thrown at us, we had to change tracks really quickly. And I can tell you about that later. But Reservoir was supposed to be a source and supply, and that's what the word means. And so as a retail store, we were called Reservoir. As soon as I decided to rebrand and become a jewelry only business, I became Stacked by Reservoir. And that was a business name that I ran on for 5 years. And I changed the Instagram handle, I changed the Facebook marketing, handle. I changed the e-commerce website. I told everyone, I sent out newsletters and emails, and just I really talked about it to everyone. Like
Yeah.
anyone who would listen, all my brands knew about it, all my clients knew about it. I posted about it on my personal and my professional accounts, and it was really kind of just a slow burn till everyone stopped referring to me as Reservoir and started doing Stacked by Reservoir. And then again, a year ago, I decided, I feel like Reservoir doesn't really make sense anymore.
Yeah.
It's that has kind of expired and no one knows us as the store
Yeah.
that we were. They know it as me and they know
Yeah.
it as what I do. And
Yeah.
that's when it became Stacked LA. And I did another e-commerce rebrand and this time I did my logo and my branding. And, it's just something that I think you always have to keep reinventing yourself and stopping, take a look back and say, who am I? Does everyone get who I am?
Yeah.
Is it really representing who I am? Have I changed and I need to change how it looks? And
Yeah.
so that's what I did. And I'm sure there will be other rebrands or, reconfigurations as time moves on.
And so do you feel like when you did that, when you had that 1 year, did you have moments during that year where you were like, this is not going to work? Or like, this is really hard, or this is not building the way I thought it would? And what did you do in those moments to keep going? Or like, what kept you going in the doubt? Because I think for anybody who's trying to create, to be in a creative life, right? And build any business in
Totally.
creativity, there is so much self-doubt, especially in entrepreneurship. And so how do you push through those moments? Like, did you have them and what did you do?
No, I mean, I definitely had those moments. All of a sudden it was, creating my own income, and sales is a particularly difficult industry in which it's different every month. You don't have a
Yeah.
set salary. So I could have months that were amazing and months that weren't amazing. I could spend 24 hours a day, all day long on one sale that falls through, or I could spend
Yeah.
5 minutes on a sale that ends up being amazing. And
Yeah.
you just kind of don't know. And to this day, it continues like that. Sales will always be something you cannot rely on. The economy will change and
Yeah.
you'll always have to reevaluate. Tariffs was interesting because I wondered how it was going to affect the supply chain for all of my designers. And
Did it?
it hasn't yet. I
Okay.
thought it might, but it really hasn't yet. The gold market definitely has affected, it costs so much more for people to make. And a lot of designers have started playing with stones and pearls as opposed to the chunky metals that they might have done before. But a lot of my clients are still buying jewelry because at the end of the day, it is, an investment that will continue to appreciate.
Yeah.
So, luckily for me, it's continued to be an upward growing spiral for my business. But I think when, there have been times when there was doubt, I would talk to my friends. I have a lot of friends who are in the industry. Maybe they make movies, maybe they're in finance, maybe they're in fashion, but just kind of like, taking advantage of the fact that I have really smart friends and I want to
Yeah.
hear different ways that they might do something. I throw lots of events. I do
Yeah.
dinners, I do shopping events, I've done book events,
Yeah.
and just things that like you might meet clients that you didn't know you would meet. And it's always word of mouth and friend of a friend. I'm sitting here with you and you're wearing a ring that I custom made for you and you're
Yes.
literally a walking ad.
Yeah.
And so every piece that I do for someone ends up becoming marketing. And
Yeah.
when it slows down, a lot of it's just saying, okay, it's slow. Instead of getting in my head and getting really scared about it, I'm going to keep on posting. I'm going to call designers. If I haven't, a lot of designers will send me pieces and I'll do these kind of like video reviews of them and I'll post them or I'll send them specifically to clients. And when there's slowdowns, there's always a list in my head of things I can do
Yeah.
and go down to try to get the momentum back up.
I would say one of the things I think that you do really well, actually, that I think is really important is bringing community together. Because I think one of the things, and what's interesting about that is that you wouldn't necessarily think that community means jewelry sales, but it actually does, because I think everything can be brought back to community.
Totally.
So, like when people come together and meet people they like and they have a good time and the energy feels good, and then you
Yeah.
feel like spending money, or you feel like watching someone's movie, or you feel like reading their book
Yeah.
because everybody in the room felt good about the book or whatever.
Right.
And so, like, what are some ways that you would advise other people, whether they're in the jewelry industry or not? Like, what are some ways to think about building community and bringing people together that
Yeah,
can be really
I
fun?
think it's really important to think outside the box and kind of forget like what it is that I'm doing specifically. Obviously, I'm specifically here selling jewelry, but I've had succulent building workshops and I've had yoga retreats.
Wow.
I've had sushi omakase dinners.
Oh, I want to
And
go.
a lot next one you're there first. But I think it's important to honor the fact that, my clients become my friends. If they weren't my friends to start with, they become my friends. And I care for them as people. I know, this is something that I learned in high school. I worked for a retail store in Connecticut. And, their big thing was hug your salespeople, hug your customers. And a lot of that rang true. They really paid attention to, every client's birthday, their kids' names, their kid's birthday, their dog's birthday, their anniversary, every piece of jewelry that they own, everything that they tell you they like. I keep like ridiculous records of anything my clients have, even at an event, if they said, oh, I love your friend's necklace, I
Mm,
take account of it because
yeah.
maybe their husband's going to reach out and
Yes.
get an idea.
Yes.
And I want to know. So I use these opportunities for me as a salesperson to really understand my clients better. But I want my clients to feel like I'm their friend. They could go buy a piece of jewelry anywhere.
Yeah.
Why would they want to keep buying with me? They trust that I know their collection, that I know their style, that I know
Yeah.
everything they want. And then I'm thinking of it as more than just one sale. Sometimes you walk into a store and, it's like Pretty Woman. They're like, you look great in it. Or not the one where she gets kicked out. But say she looks,
The other one.
and you're like, do I trust, or Romeo and Michelle? When
Yes, 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 yes.
But it's like, do I trust this salesperson? Or are they just trying to make a sale? It's like, no, I trust them. They're trying to, there are brands that are newer. And sometimes I'll wait before I pick them up or I start working with them because I want to see how they develop and sometimes I start working with them before I even sell them to my clients. I want to help develop them
Yeah.
because I want them to be a good investment to my client. And that's, something that I've faced a lot of people in the retail industry because what I do is different. What I do
Yeah.
is not traditional retail. So a lot of other retailers in the beginning, they looked at me like, well, you're not buying inventory. How is that fair? I buy inventory. And I think of it as like, you have an advantage over me by the fact that you have a brick and mortar. People can walk in and I need to kind of generate my own sales.
Yeah.
But additionally, I'm not a stylist. I'm not someone who's just doing, sale by sale. I'm someone who also wants to work hand in hand with brands and really grow their development, because the better a brand does, the better of an investment it is for my client.
So, for example, so let's say you're working with a jewelry designer, you have their catalog of what they have.
Yes.
And then obviously you're not pre-buying that. You just have that available to you as you're talking
I
to
have that
people.
available to me. So, some designers will make stock.
Yeah.
Some designers keep incredible stock, and I can kind of be like, hey, my client really loves, the S letter pinky ring. Do you have one in stock? And they might say yes, in which case they would ship it. They might say no, in which case, I know the production times for all of the brands that I work with, and then we'll drop ship when it's available. But additionally, it also gives the opportunity for me to say to my client, hey, they do have one available, but like, that S is supposed to represent both of your kids who have an S name. So like, wouldn't it be cute if we put their birthdays on the inside? And
Yeah.
wouldn't it be cute if maybe we like set their birthstone instead of the diamond? And just like different ways to make it special and unique. And this particular retail model allows me that flexibility. I could have obviously done it as a retailer, but you have very, limited exposure to your clients when they walk into a store.
Yeah.
Whereas like I can talk to my clients for days and weeks about a sale.
Yeah.
And when really close, and I also like another thing I'm known for saying besides do what you love is jewelry net receipts. Cause I tell my clients like, text me in the morning, text me at night. I don't care what time zone you're in. Like
Yeah.
if I'm breathing, like,
Yeah.
I will respond.
Well, and I think also, I think the idea of customizing also, especially when it comes to jewelry, makes it very special because then everything is like an heirloom or like a reminder. I mean, like this is literally, my entire family is on this ring. And that's what it reminds me of every time I wear it. So it's not just a ring.
Exactly.
It's a ring with meaning.
Yeah. So that's important to me because obviously, I love jewelry. I love selling people jewelry, but it's so much different to sell someone something that has like a significant meaning to them that like touches down somewhere in their soul when they're wearing it. And, I feel like every piece I have, I can like tell a little story about it. Yeah. And that makes it more special and it's just more fun. And I do what I love. I don't work with people I don't like. If there's brands who are difficult or, customers who like are hard to deal with, but not nice. Like,
What do you-
need to deal with them?
So let's talk about that for a second, because I'm sure that, this comes up for anyone starting anything. So how do you not deal with them? Or like, how do you transition out of?
I think at the beginning, no matter who, there was a brand who was, I wouldn't say the name, but there was a brand who was really, really well known. Everyone obsessed with this brand, really important. And I fought super hard to work with this brand. And I finally was approved to work with the brand. And we had so many difficulties. It seemed like I couldn't do anything right.
Yeah.
They were constantly getting mad about things. They were so intense.
Yeah.
It wasn't fun anymore.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I'm going to lose some money if I don't work with this brand. Like, I'm not going to get all the sales that I could potentially get.
Yeah.
But I decided it wasn't worth the headache for me.
Yeah.
It wasn't worth the negativity that it was putting in my business.
Yeah.
And I opened up by letting go of that, I opened up free space for other brands, other new clients. No matter what it is that you're doing, even if it's a love relationship, like if you're holding on to something, there's not room in your heart for something else good to come to you.
Yeah.
So like when you're stuck on that thing and you're just trying to make it work and it seems like you need it, you probably don't need it. In fact, I think you're probably better without them. And that brand ended up coming back to me later and asking if I could reconsider and come back to them. And I said no.
Oh, that
I
feels
held up
good.
firm.
That feels good. What about like with a friend or with someone who's not happy with something, or like, how do you deal with those dynamics? And also even like, because right now, for example, I'm in a very different space, but I'm doing like some celebrity gifting, right? And it's like the celebrities are supposed to post X, Y, and Z, but then sometimes they don't. But they're also my friends.
Yeah.
And like, I don't, and so it's this hard kind of middle thing to deal with because you don't want to like, the friendship obviously always comes first, and you want to make sure that people are happy and feel good.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, there's like the reality of the dynamic.
Yeah.
And so like, how do you deal with stuff like that?
Yes. In sales, I do kind of believe not necessarily that the customer's always right, but I will work so hard to make sure my customer is happy.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I will try to do right by my customer, even if that means giving back every cent that they spent
Yeah.
and calling it a loss. For me, the customer being happy or me feeling that I did everything that I could have done to make the customer happy is important to me. But there are some people who like kind of walk this world and they're a little bit miserable. And,
Yeah.
you kind of just have to, at the end of the day, take a deep breath and be like, that was a lesson.
Yeah.
I've learned that that person and I probably shouldn't do business together.
Yeah.
And you kind of move forward.
Yeah.
But, I do really work my hardest to like always try to do right by someone. Like if a stone falls out or if
Yeah.
something isn't what they expected or if they like it but they don't love it, seeing what I can do,
Yeah.
trying to go above and beyond. But, at the end of the day, if someone is just unresponsive, doesn't want to do it, I don't really work with influencers and that because that does create, that thing of like, all right, well, you said you do this and you got that. Like, I've just never really done it. So I can't really speak to that.
Yeah.
But as far as my clients go, I will do my absolute best. And at the end of the day, if someone is just still feels like you've wronged them, there's not much you can do.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
I guess letting it go is important. And then I think the other thing too is obviously like seeing the bigger picture, which like you said, is like if you're trying to see how the customer's right, then ultimately, hopefully they're a customer for a long time.
Exactly.
And because they see the value that you put in of trying
Totally.
to
And
say the right thing.
I will work that hard for a customer who bought something for $200.
Yeah.
Because maybe they're a customer who one day is buying something for $200,000.
Yeah. And you never know.
Or maybe their friend is. Or maybe their, coworker is.
That's true.
You don't know. I respect all my clients the exact same, no matter, what level of client they are.
Yeah.
And I think that's like another really important thing for any business, whether it's a, small potatoes client or a baked potatoes client. I don't know what we call big caviar client. Caviar potatoes. But to me, they're all the same because, they're my client. They're someone who trusts me. And I'm very honored for that,
Yeah. And so have you ever gone through like and emailed people for more clients or like done like a promotion or like have you ever done stuff like that?
So when I initially had my store, we worked with an email marketing campaign company, and I kind of pulled back when I transitioned and it became very like personal touch. I do blast emails for events.
Yeah.
But a lot of it's just like personal, like checking in. Do you need anything?
Yeah.
I know your anniversary is coming up. Things like
Yeah, smart.
I very recently, because a year ago I relaunched the website and I added a lot more brands to my website. Before I had like a sampling of my brands on the website, but there were brands I worked with who weren't on there. I'm really trying to get everyone I work with on the website to just show like this is what you can get. You can get whatever's on here, but also kind of, giving them ideas and letting them know they can still reach out to me. We can do custom stuff. But I just in the last month met with a company called Clavio that a lot of like the big retailers work with. I think like the Kardashians work with them, and they're the number one Shopify CRM management kind of company that uses AI in order to do customer outreach. So you're not just looking at customer outreach based on blasting. You're really looking at data and figuring out who your client is and giving you like the touch points that you can say, like, if you looked at this, and this, and if you bought this, then
you might like
this.
Oh, and so would it be like little reminders like, hey, we saw you like this.
Totally. Or like I'm adding like, hey, this price is going up soon, so I just want to give you a heads up, or guys, a little promo, a little discount.
I get like a little targeted already in that respect.
I'm sure you do.
Like I get like a lot of emails that are like, we saw you like this.
Yeah.
So here's this.
I mean, even right now, our phones are listening to us. And to do something to target you. But for a while, I kind of felt like my business I didn't know where the next step was, the next growth, because it's me.
Yeah.
And I did actually have my first hire last year, which was great. It took me a really long time to be able to feel like someone else could do my job and kind of spread it out.
Yeah. So what did that hire look like? What does that person do?
So basically, I hired a girl in New York who does exactly what I do, but she just does it with her own clients. And she's creating her own clientele. And I really trained her. I trained her to understand the process, to understand all designers. And I never wanted to put that much training into someone because obviously they can always leave and become your competitor.
Yeah.
But I knew her beforehand for years. I trusted her. She was a new mom. And, the flexibility I have with my job as a mother is amazing.
Yeah.
And so I loved the idea that I could provide it to her. And she was also someone I knew loved jewelry the way I would.
Yeah.
And who was going to put in the time to make sure it was done right and cared. It was like a perfect alignment.
Yeah.
I'd love to be able to hire more people like that over time because basically she makes her own money. She runs her own role. I don't mess with her clients. They're her clients. They're not my clients. But, together under our arm, we have, the ability to, contact any designer. If anything goes wrong, there's warranties. And,
Yeah.
there's kind of a guarantee for her being under my, umbrella.
Do you take a little percentage of what she
And I
sells?
take a percentage of what she sells.
Right.
So for me, growth would be having more people like that.
Yeah.
In addition to obviously always growing my personal clientele.
Yeah.
And also just the organic website growth will always be helpful. That's something that I'm continuously looking at. And that's why I decided to look into this CRM and figure out ways that I could take advantage of AI and the internet. And I really consider myself a small business. People always used to tell me like, you could be like this and you could be huge and like, it wasn't what I wanted. I liked the size of my business, but I'm seeing the opportunity to have ways to grow it in small ways that still maintain the authenticity of what I think it is.
And I think even though it's a small business, I think you really do have a really big range of what you sell.
Totally.
So some of the things you sell are very expensive. And so it's like, it just depends on what people are buying, what the sale looks like.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's like different when you're a small business in a different capacity because I feel like this small business has the capacity for a really big sale. And it just takes one person.
It just takes one.
Yeah.
I've sold things for $500 to the same client who bought something for $100,000.
Yes.
And so I genuinely know that it can be small or big.
So what would you say is there ever been a moment where you felt like something didn't go the way you wanted and it ended up being better?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the example that I gave with that company that designer didn't work out with would be one that comes to mind. There's been sales that, I worked on so hard and I lost the sale. They ended up, buying a Rolex. I'm like, what are you going to do? I don't sell Rolex.
Yeah.
I sell vintage Rolexes, but I don't sell like brand new Rolexes. And, it's very frustrating, but I kind of just always keep at it. And then you get a bigger sale next time. And, you're excited for them. Show me the Rolex. I want to see that. Because I do want to see the Rolex because I bet it's awesome.
Yeah.
And then, one of my clients bought a Cartier Badoir bracelet, watch the other day. And I immediately was so excited for her. And then I sent her all these styling bracelets that one of my designers does where it's almost like an exact cuff that sort of looks like the Badoir wraps around 3 times.
Yeah.
And like, I think it's so cool. And she hadn't seen it yet. And, I just think that sometimes what is originally a loss isn't actually a loss in the end.
So what would you say to anyone else who's trying to start their jewelry business or, what would you say is like the first step of whether they should really look at themselves and be like, if I'm going to do this, these are the things I should really assess about myself.
Yeah.
What kind of skills or
I mean, in the industry of sales, I think that you should always make sure you're a people person.
Yeah.
That you like people.
Yeah.
And you should make sure you like the thing you're selling. If you're selling knives, make sure you love knives.
Yeah.
If you're selling jewelry, make sure you love jewelry. I just think it makes the business, so much easier. If you're selling, derivatives, make sure you love derivatives. Whatever it is, make sure you know it. Make sure is a passion. You have to do what you love, like I said before. And I think that's just like a really important part of any business, any creative. When it's something that's second nature to you and something that you're passionate about, you're not going to get tired of it and sick of it. I have a friend right now who's working on a fund for, his own fund where they, VC, they invest in other businesses. And he was getting really frustrated. They're $30 million short of their fund goal. And he was feeling really down. And he was asking me like, should I keep doing this? And he's already invested in some pretty cool companies. And I was like, do you love it? You seem like you love it. He's like, yeah, I love it. And I was like, don't give up yet.
Yeah.
Like you have the passion. Like, I know your personality, you're charismatic. Like
Yeah.
Sometimes I think people give up a little too soon. I'm not saying you should, dig yourself into the ground with, sometimes if it doesn't work, you have to just like rebranding, you have to
Yeah.
reevaluate and try a different
Yeah.
route. But I think that, at first when you don't succeed, it's why they say try again. Like you have to give it a few goes and you have to take some losses and you have to feel that feeling of failure. Without that feeling, you're not going to get anywhere.
Well, and I think also one of the things for me that I tell myself all the time is like, just keep checking in.
Yeah.
So like, it doesn't mean give up, like, because I feel like giving up all the time,
Yeah.
but I'm going to get up and do it anyway. I'm going to push through that feeling, but I'm also allowed to just check in and be like, do I still love this? Does this still make me happy? Like, what are the pieces that are really still in me that I really need to be doing? And what are the parts that are getting really frustrating? Are the parts that are getting really frustrating the work, or are they the things that are out of my control? What are the things that I can control? And I think but checking in is also really important.
That I totally agree with that, especially, my husband was a chef for 20 years and he was like a Michelin dining chef. He had worked in the industry forever for some of the best chefs in the industry. And when we had our first daughter in 2021, he, kind of did a check-in and realized it wasn't his passion anymore. And he wanted to be home with our kids. He wanted to see them more often. He wanted to have the ability to travel more and make a different, type of income than you can as a chef. And we did a big, check-in, and at I think he was 40,
Yeah.
he decided to completely change careers.
Yeah.
It was real estate, and it's like super scary. And
Yeah.
he always supports me in my business, so I was like, of course I support you in your decision. And
Yeah.
and he really loves what he does now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So, okay, last question. What does Be the Training mean to you?
I think for me, it's really, kind of like manifestation. And obviously, you understand manifestation's connection to Be the Train. But I think everything I've been like, I'm going to sell this necklace. Like, I'm obsessed with this necklace. This is a piece of art. This is something really special. I put my eye on it and I figure out who is the right client. I keep going for them. If it's not that person, I try someone else. I think, it's just about not giving up and having faith in yourself that you can do it, and putting it out into the universe that you're going to do it, and just keep going.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming. But if you want to over here, just let everybody know where they can find you, where they can find your jewelry.
Yes, my website is www.stackedxla.com. My Instagram is stackedxla, and my personal is Alissa Matkovich.